Hey everyone, welcome to the June 4th Integral Lower Body Training Log. I'm Anisha. This is my training session. And I'm going to invite you in and talk about some of the stuff that happens that you can see, but also some of the behind the scenes stuff that you can't see. This was Jaren and there's some great grammar for you. This was our first lower body training session since starting powerlifting again. It was a lot of fun. I'm not going to lie, there was some apprehension on my part. I knew there were going to be a lot of areas that I needed to address, and I had to intentionally set my focus on saying, there are going to be items to address. I am going to go into this, I'm going to find my weak points, and everything I learned today is going to inform my future workouts. Rather than saying, my performance here is the end all be all, defines my identity, defines my day, and makes or breaks me. And it was a choice, and it was a very intentional choice, especially once I started deadlifting and realized that I was still having issues in places I thought I had taken care of. So that mindset change was important. I also had the very interesting experience at the end of the workout. It was a really hot day, low 90s. We're training in an aluminum storage shed, and Jaren has this killer superset at the end. Row a sled, drag the sled, do planks, come back out, push a heavier sled, down and back. And that was one set. And it doesn't sound like a lot. In 90 degrees with the asphalt and after everything we had already done, it was a ton. And at the end of round 1, and there were only supposed to be 2 rounds, but at the end of round 1, I had an asthma attack. And this is what I kind of want to talk about is I had this asthma attack. I couldn't find my inhaler. The asthma attack and the lack of inhaler led to a panic attack. Like, I've had panic attacks before. I've had PTSD when I first started coming to the gym, so I had panic attacks in the gym a lot. This was the worst one I've had in probably a year at the gym. And it effectively shut down my training. And it took me about an hour to kind of get myself together, and then a couple days to recover, even with finding my inhaler. So it was interesting to me, and it told me something that I kind of want to talk about in this video, because I think it's important. When you walk into the gym, you have some choices to make. You can decide, I'm just working on physical stuff. And you can completely ignore the mental, emotional, spiritual, and social aspects of yourself and of your training. But there's an invitation when you come into a gym setting to train all of those areas. Especially in powerlifting, you're faced with stress, you're faced with fear. I was faced all the time with various triggers. When I started powerlifting, I had PTSD, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, sensory processing disorder. I was dealing with depression and anxiety, among other things. I had other stuff going on besides that. So every time I walked into the gym, there was always an element of mental, emotional, spiritual tension, besides what was going on physically. And I had to learn to train myself in all of those areas while I was training my body, if I was going to make progress physically. Because really, physical movement, at least in my experience, is the expression of identity. It's the expression of where you're at mentally and emotionally. And Jaron and I used to talk about it when people would walk into the gym when we had Savage open. You could tell where they were mentally and emotionally by how they carried themselves. Their lifts reflected their mental, emotional, spiritual, and social health and well-being in that moment. And so it wasn't just recovery, it wasn't just the physical stuff. There was mental training that could go on. And with all the stuff I was dealing with, I made the decision, okay, on my good days, I am going to very intentionally practice things like grounding techniques. Grounding techniques help with anxiety attacks. I'm going to pay more attention to the kinds of triggers I have and how I can work through them. And I did it on purpose. So while I was training physically, I took advantage of the environment that also tested my mental and emotional, spiritual, and social resilience. And I worked on all of them at the same time. What happened here when I had the anxiety attack and just was overcome by panic is I realized later, I had to think about it for a while, but I realized that it had been over a year since I've had a significant panic attack, and in that time, I stopped the mental and emotional training that I had been doing to get me to the place I was mentally and emotionally with those things. And it reminded me of the quote, and I'm going to biff it, but you'll get it anyway. In times of crisis, you do not rise to the level of your expectations, you fall to the level of your training. And training is an ongoing process. So if I want to mitigate the impacts of anxiety and panic in the future, I need to intentionally train those areas of who I am that allow me to be strong in the ways I need to be strong to help stave those off or at least mitigate some of the aftermath. And it excited me well after the fact because I realized I have this opportunity to get stronger physically, to overcome things like inertia and laziness and complacency. But I also have the opportunity, if I will take it, to train myself mentally with the stories I tell, how I approach stress, how I approach fear and new tasks, new things, and how I approach areas where I'm weak. I can improve my mental resilience, my emotional resilience, my spiritual resilience, and my social resilience. And I can improve in all of those areas if I'm willing to. It takes a conscious decision and a conscious effort, but it is so worth it